Welcome to Foxhole Symphony, a podcast about the transformational value of men in authentic community.
In our Foxhole, men are equipped to build relationships that foster belonging, accountability, and growth.
Stop believing the lie that you can thrive in isolation and instead
join us on the journey from broken to whole.
Hello, everyone. They call me the Maestro, and we are back in the Foxhole where we actively pursue belonging, accountability, and growth through authentic relationships. No masks, no agendas, just iron sharpening iron. Today, Mark and Steve have a special guest. They are looking at what fruit we can expect from our... Wait a minute, does that say failure? I don't know. It sounds bananas to me. But let's get it over to the guys and see what we can learn today.
Welcome back to Foxhole Symphony Podcast. I'm Sarge here with my good brother Mark.
Hey, good morning, bro.
Good morning. Good to see you again, as always.
You too, always.
Excited to be back in the Foxhole.
I am. It's a good day.
It's a great day. So we have another guest that we are very excited about that we've been anticipating for quite some time.
We have.
And for those that maybe, well, as you go back and you look at our list of guests, well, so many will know this guest today, our dear brother Rob, and Maz, episode 9, Unbroken, phenomenal episode, really kind of almost went a bit viral. Although we think Maz just has that number of friends that he sent it out to listen to, or
he downloaded the episode a lot himself.
Yeah, 15,000 times a day. But that he came to us through Rob, and so. This morning Rob was saying, I got to think about who else I could send you. I said, the bar's high, because Maz set the bar high for any guests that come from Rob. So we've got with us this morning in the Foxhole, Rob Cruver. Rob, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, guys.
Good to be with you.
Great to have you.
Mark and I spend quite a bit of time with Rob. And
that's a good point.
We do.
Sorry about it.
We do. No, and it's so beautiful. We were just saying, Rob, man, like, you do so much. You're so engaged and involved in the lives of so many people and in kingdom work. And there's so many intersections and just how God has sort of woven this tapestry of our lives and ministry, in this geographical region. And of course, you're involved in ministry in other parts of the world as well. But because of this personal connection, it's the timing, as I look back and I say, wow, like, I think I remember the first time I met you, I think it was involving New Jersey City Serve, which was a great ministry initiative here in New Jersey. And then just, kind of unfolded from there. And now, of course, we work very closely together. And you're just a dear brother and a counselor to me and to so many others.
Same. I don't remember the first time I met you, but our experience together at the Mark Men Weekend is what sticks in my head. At least for me, you and God, that's where it stands. So
yeah,
I had heard a lot about you. Yeah. And just so appreciate, your heart. We have a board behind us, which we've talked about before on the air, and always has a prayer reminder and a cloud. And we put the name of the guy or person or topic we're talking to. And right now it says Cruve the Groove, which is a nickname Sarge told me for.
And I'll say, because you bring peace, man. It's like groove, the groove. It's just like, when I'm with you and I'm in your presence, like,
yeah.
Okay.
I feel it. I know what you're talking about. I feel you.
I'm in the groove.
Yeah.
I'm in the presence of the groove.
Okay.
The great presence.
There you go.
And Rob doesn't like where we're headed with this at all.
Yeah. So,
I was going to say, sometimes it's a fine line between a groove and a rut. You gotta watch that.
Yeah. Hey,
It depends how long you keep rubbing.
How long you stay in that groove. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's good to have you, brother.
Thank you.
For those that don't know Rob, there's so much we could say, and we won't have this huge bio because we're gonna, ask you a little bit about your story. But Rob is, he's a shepherd. He's a counselor, just a warrior. He's involved in ministry, which you'll hear about. He's a former pastor. He's a chaplain. He is an author and speaker and, all of those things. And now you can add to the list a Foxhole Symphony guest.
Top of my list now.
There you go. Saying the right thing.
Yeah.
You have nothing else to do on a Saturday morning.
Actually, I turned down birthday cake today to be with you guys.
Come
this morning.
on.
Yeah. I was together with
Who's having birthday cake on a Saturday morning?
five of my sisters are. I have 5 sisters, and we were together last night to celebrate 2 of the twins' birthdays. And I got the call this morning. Hey, Rob, can you come over at 9:30 for birthday cake? I'm like, I mean, birthday cake on a Saturday morning. That's a pretty good gig.
That is. That's tough to pass up.
But here I am, guys.
All right. So I'll be there at 11.
Yeah, right. Save a slice.
Exactly.
Save a slice.
Well, thank you for choosing the Foxhole.
Over birthday cake.
There you go.
Amen. Well, again, good to have you in the Foxhole, and we're in some other foxholes together that we'll get into. But man, let's dive in. I mean, tell the listeners just a little bit about you, man. Let's get into your story and just kind of whatever it is that's on your heart to share.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks first of all for the privilege to be here and for the introduction. It's strange to hear an introduction. Honestly, I guess we'll get into that because I used to hear it all the time in my life. And then, things changed radically in my life about 6 years ago. So it kind of took me back to that. Yeah. So a lot of things when you introduce me are like former. I'm former, former and former. The main thing that's not former is I am a current lover of Jesus. And that will always be my story. Yeah. A lot of other things are in the past, but by God's grace, a lot of things are again in the present and the future. So I grew up here in Jersey. You guys noticed my British socks. So my mom was from England. Dad grew up in Jersey. They're both with Jesus now, but I still go out to England a lot, have some family there, and it's a part of my roots. But Jersey's my home. Really, other than going to college and grad school, I've always been in Jersey.
By the way, sorry, just for our listeners, he's wearing socks with the Union Jack on.
Yes.
He says British socks.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Yeah. And he's got an old school British phone booth in his lawn.
Right.
So if you've ever been
it's
to
real.
And it's real, it's like literally from, right? I mean, it's incredible.
You guys want to do a podcast out of the phone booth sometime?
That would be tight quarters. That would be tight quarters.
We'll be fine. Sorry.
No problem. Got married to Deb and met her, Deb, in Kentucky. Have 2 biological children, 2 adopted children. So I basically I have 4 children and deep blessings in my life with Hannah and Josh and Luke and Joy, 3 grandchildren, so Pop is my primary title these days. And
you are a Pop.
I am a Pop.
I like it. I like it.
I should have worn my Pop hat. That's the one that goes on a lot.
I hope to be a Poppy because that was my grandfather's.
Yeah.
Yep. Got it. I love that.
So that's it. Going back to the days, I'm a former soccer player, and so I ran sports camps for about 26 years called Victory Soccer Camps, and then expanded to Victory Sports Camps. That was a lot of fun. Was privileged to launch a college here in New Jersey. At the time, was called Somerset Christian College, and then as I was the chancellor, it became Pillar College, and it's still rocking. It's a beautiful, beautiful college. Based out of Newark, but with campuses in Plainfield and Parsippany, and actually I've lost track of where they are because I'm not formally. I just talked to the president the other day, a really nice brother. But that was a big part of my life. Pastoring at Zarephath Christian Church was a big part of my life for many, many years. Outreach is called Autumn Blaze that we used to run, and then I was really closely affiliated with the ministry Star 99. So those are bits of my past and what I used to do. Then everything came to a transition point about 6 years ago.
And much, if not all, of what you just mentioned, has continued.
Yes.
And continues to bear fruit.
Yeah. So, well, thankfully, most of that is still going strong.
Yeah.
And that's the gift of God, to see how that lives are still being changed. Also, a ministry, Urban Impact, that's not running locally anymore, but it's running pretty extensively in Kentucky, and overseas mission work that we're still quite involved with in Liberia, West Africa, in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, India. So God's gracious, that most of those things are still continuing to bear wonderful fruit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So what happened 6 years ago? I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into there, but what changed? I mean, talk to us about that transition.
Yeah. So, I think, Sarge, you started asking me to, consider coming on a podcast a while ago, and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. Mark asked a couple months ago, I think, and I said yes, but we still scheduled it out a couple months, sounded good.
Yeah. That was November or December.
Okay. Yeah. And so as the date gotten closer, honestly, multiple times thinking, I don't think I'm ready to, not ready, so much of my life now is just keeping my head down, my heart bowed, trying to quietly serve Jesus, and not be noticed.
Yes.
And just because of what happened 6 years ago, or whenever it happened, 7 years ago, but married to a wonderful woman, serving the Lord as a pastor and kind of Christian leader in this area, and did to me what was unthinkable to me, something I just knew I would never do, but I committed adultery, and my world changed. It's something that I'll always wish never happened. It's something that eventually led to the loss of my marriage, although my Deb, my former wife, and I are close and loving and kind. Deb even works part-time for Lionsgate Ministries still. And God has done amazing restoration, but at that point in time, my life just came to a rocking halt. Wow. When I think about it, I've told this story 1,000 times over, but I typically tell it to, one or two people,
Sure,
or a small group, or people I'm counseling. So it's not that I don't tell the story, but because just remembering that day that I confessed to my family, it's something that even 6 years down the road is still painful to think about. Remembering the day that I stood before twice in two different services before the congregation at Zarephath Christian Church, to confess my sin, and to resign from everything. At that point, just all my roles just came crashing down. The most important being husband and father, of course, but everything else, and just being lost, that was that's what happened. That's when everything happened.
Thank you for sharing that, Rob. And I'm sure Mark shares this, because we know and love you so much that it's hard to even ask the question. And I hesitate, and yet the reason we ask is we just believe that God will use this time, hopefully to continue to bring healing to your own heart, as well as the hearts of others that maybe just need to hear a part of this story, of your story, of our stories, of any story.
Yeah.
And so it's, but I hesitate to not want to bring you back there, and because so much you've moved so far, from there. God has brought you so far from that point. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that, before we do. it's on my heart to ask, like, I just remember that time, and, everything from, whether it be press or, just even in talking to you about some of those closest to you and how people responded. And, not everybody was kind. And I'd love to park there for a minute, because I think there's something there for us all, and, I don't know, would you touch on that? Like, maybe what you needed, what you got, what you didn't get. Part of the thing that has always amazed me is that you, for one reason or another, I don't really necessarily even know why, but you chose to stay in the community that you were in geographically.
Yeah.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, others, that were providing counsel, I think even encouraged you to move away to other parts of the country. And,
yes.
and you chose not to. And I, for me, I've always looked at that and been amazed by that. And it required so much courage. I'm so thankful that you didn't, that you stayed. Because I see, I see you walking with Jesus. I see you even teaching others to do that. And it's beautiful. I know God's using you, but touch on some of that.
Yeah. Well, so once, confessing to my family and kind of everything, just coming into the darkest season, I definitely wanted to run. As someone who was wired, as we are as men, to fix things, and as someone who, loves Jesus as we do, always wanting to help bring healing and hope, wanting to help people through their pain, never causing the pain. And then when you bring the deepest pain to your family, to your wife, to your children, like the deepest pain, and then to so many others, it was really hard. I mean, Deb and I went away immediately to an intensive counseling experience in Colorado. Wonderful ministry in Buena Vista called Crossroads Christian Counseling, and they focus a lot with marriage breakdown, and they do a lot of work with couples in ministry. So they were wonderful. And I remember, at that point in time, it was just so dark. I lost 30 pounds in 30 days.
Wow.
Just my heart rate was through the roof. I had no appetite. Deb and I were going deep with the intensive counseling and just horrified by the pain I'd brought. And I, at that point, honestly, didn't see a way through it. So I do remember the counselor, Will, wonderful man, at one of those sessions saying, "Rob, I know this is hard for you to understand right now, but I promise you that you will always be thankful for what God will do through something you'll always wish never happened." And I am seeing that, although I still will always wish, things hadn't happened. So Deb and I were committed to our marriage. She was forgiving, loving, forgiving, committed to working through. And we did work on the marriage for 3 or 4 years before actually our marriage ended. And we were also caring for, we have children. We also were caring for Deb's mom. She was living with us. She's since gone to be with the Lord. So, wanted to move in some ways, but also we were committed to caring for our children or not necessarily caring for them, but being with our children and caring for my mother-in-law. And then also we wanted to be a testimony, right? That God can redeem and does redeem. And I do not at all blame when something like this happens. I totally understand why people would move.
Yeah.
It's not like I was a rock star, but I ministered in this area. There wasn't a church in this area I hadn't spoken at. I was on the radio every day. I was leading conferences. Yeah, I had written a book. I was, involved with a lot of the high profile ministries in the area. And so again, all that for the glory of Jesus, but no buts, all that for the glory of Jesus. But it also meant staying in this area. There wasn't anywhere I would go that I wouldn't know somebody or see the bank, the grocery store, the
coffee shop,
the pizzas, wherever. And it was, I was just so gripped with shame and guilt and sorrow every day for the first, at least the first year. I did not want to wake up in the morning. And I had never known in my life, I had never known anxiety. That was not a part of my journey at all. Depression. I counseled a lot of people through that. I think I was empathetic toward it, but I'd never felt these things.
Sure.
It's not like, I loved Jesus, and life had been sweet, really. Life had been sweet, and I really hadn't known failure. And then when I came to know it, it was a devastating failure and a deep, deep wound. So Deb and I we stayed in the area, and I'm still here. Deb is moved back to Kentucky right now. Where she's from, and she's with, family and friends there, and stays in close touch and comes to visit a lot with the kids and grandkids. But yeah, part of the decision to stay, a significant part, was to bring healing and to try, and to, after the year, as my relationship with the kids was, particularly with my daughter, Hannah, was completely devastated. But God began to heal in, counseling and just walking. God began to heal, and we wanted to serve the Lord again together, in some way. And so we had always done prison ministry, always working with young people in need. And so we decided to move toward launching another ministry while I went back into physical therapy, which is how Sarge, you and I reconnected,
yes.
Because I'm a physical therapist from first training and profession. And so was privileged to connect back with you and with Ron and get hired at Performance Rehab. Although it wasn't my heart to do that, but I had to figure. The first few jobs I did, I worked for I did some demolition work with a cousin of mine. Almost killed myself quite a few times. I delivered pizzas. It was good, very humbling. I was already humbled, so that was fine.
I hear there's openings at Boomerang Bagels.
Yeah. Hip hip Jorge.
Yes.
We know Georgie over there.
Yeah.
He's now a local celebrity. Because he was on TV. They just interviewed George. Yeah. So way to go, George.
Yesterday. Yeah.
Double meat, double egg, everything bagel, salt, pepper, ketchup, hot sauce.
You saw it exactly.
Sorry, I digress.
No, that's because he's one of our special young men in our residential program at Lionsgate.
Yes,
we do have to come. You've mentioned Lionsgate twice, and I don't want to take you off track, but remind us to come back to Lionsgate.
Okay, of course,
because you talked early on about the past.
Well, let's go there because
time?
Yeah, I think so. And would love to talk about. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I just want to ask a question about one of the many things you asked Rob.
Yeah.
In your second line of questions was about what you experienced after that pivot point, that transition point.
Yeah.
Specifically about forgiveness. Just it's on my heart about how did you deal with, look, I would think if that was me at that time, I would have quickly positioned myself to seek out the most forgiving people possible, right? To surround myself with the ones, because of my life experience in Band of Brothers and elsewhere, when guys in my foxhole admit sin to me, early on, 10, 12 years ago, I would be like, think that part of my role was forgiving them. And it's so not. But it took me a while to mature in my faith and understand what my role was, what God called us to as brothers when we admit sin to one another. I'm curious what you found in your foxhole at that time in terms of forgiveness.
I spent, the first week or two calling. I had a couple boards that I was accountable to as a pastor and as a ministry leader, and I called everyone that I could to tell them directly. I met with my staff one-on-one. And I literally, had conversations, I guess, with just hundreds of people that I needed to have conversations with to confess and to ask their forgiveness. I hadn't directly sinned against them, but, to ask their forgiveness for what I did. I would say most people were gracious. There's a spectrum, of course. Many people who I thought would be gracious were more angry. Others, that I thought would kind of stand, stand, I guess, not necessarily with me, but with us, didn't, couldn't, for whatever reason. I think the most challenging thing, I understood, or I've come to understand people's anger, I guess, just because they felt I let them down, and I did. Of course, I hurt and let a lot of people down, though that wasn't my intention. I remember. I didn't wake up one day and say I'm going to commit adultery. Right? It was I'm going to sin. That's a much longer story of how just in a vulnerable time of a lot of ministry work and various challenges and stressors that I became vulnerable to an emotional relationship that just a friendship that became an emotional relationship that became more, and should never have, never will justify that, never try to justify that. But it wasn't, again, it wasn't, it's hard to maybe understand, but it was never my intent to dishonor God or hurt anyone. I made a very broken decision. A sinful decision, but a very broken decision at a time of vulnerability. When you guys talk a lot about foxholes, when I didn't have a really strong foxhole in my life, because I was spending so much time ministering, traveling, speaking, pouring into others. And it was a season. I'd always had a foxhole in my life, but it was a season I didn't really have that in my life.
It's interesting. It just reminded me a little bit of our conversation with Rob Chifakoyo, right? Who's in ministry, and the loneliness in ministry, and particularly as pastors who need to be, who are, their public profiles, there's an image perhaps that needs to be maintained, beyond just a standard that's set for them or they set for themselves, and of course a biblical, standard for all of us.
Yeah.
But there's, here's a pastor who's sort of, set apart in that way, and as a result of that, tend to not have foxholes, tend to not have a community where they can get incredibly transparent and be vulnerable and be seen and share their brokenness and their woundedness in that vulnerable state.
Sure.
And what danger, to be in that position, just, I imagine, exacerbates that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Exponentially.
Yeah.
And again, not to make excuses, and I know that's not what you're doing, but that's a very real issue.
Yeah, it's definitely, on this side of it, it's what I counsel people all the time, right? Because one of the ministries the Lord has opened up for me is to counsel people who are either walking through what my family and I walked through, are walking through, or fear they might. They're very prone to walking through it, or they're in the midst of it, or on the other side of it, or I meet with a lot of pastors who are willing to be honest with me because they know what happened to me, and I'm a safe place.
Yes.
And yes, the Foxhole, to have brothers. You are not accountable. That word is, I mean, it's a good word, but it's not as strong. Accountability is just sort of like a legal thing. I'm talking about a heart thing where you're really connected to brothers that you really share your pain with, or your vulnerability, or your discouragement, or your what you are struggling with at a heart issue. Not for accountability is part of the Foxhole, right?
Sure.
But soul nurture and community and finding strength in one another. And that just had that wasn't in my life in a strong way at that time. And so I think the hardest thing, one of the hard things, other than, just having to walk through it and seek at that point, hoping, my marriage would be restored. And it looked like it was going that way. Is all the people that were mad at you there, because there was always a few of those, or judging you. Mostly it was people who just acted like you didn't exist anymore, because they didn't know what to do or say,
how to.
So just it's as it, and that includes the ministries that I served for and led. It was as if I'd never been there, never existed.
Yeah.
And I'm 6 years down the road. I understand the discomfort, people just not knowing, but believe me, it hurts in the midst of things when those you served with or served under or led and poured into just are gone.
Yeah.
And again, there's a fair amount of judgment and criticism also, which I understand. And we choosing to stay here, as you said, Sarge, earlier, that just meant I bumped into people every day.
Yeah.
Every day. For the 2 years, I wouldn't go out alone anywhere. I wanted Deb with me or a friend with me or something, because I would bump into people everywhere, and it would be either very uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that they were always judging me. I was probably mostly judging myself. But it would be awkward and it would be painful, and it would just rip open the little wound every time. And it's so much better now, but it's still a little bit now. As a matter of fact, because that was 6 years ago, but my divorce is, Deb and I's divorce is not quite 2 years. So that's more recent. And that was just another kind of sense of failure, that what I broke, I couldn't fix. You wanted it to be the great redemption story,
Sure.
that we would be the ones to say, look, God brings you through this. And he is bringing us through, but it's not the way any of us hoped it would be.
Sure.
Or thought it would be. And I had a vision at some point today before we end. I want to talk to you about, I don't have many visions, but I had a very strong vision from the Lord, which I desperately needed. But that, I guess I don't mean this as a judgment toward the church, but I will say I received much more grace from people outside of the church than I did by people inside the church. Much more grace.
Yeah.
At least much more tangible grace. Because the kind of grace I received often from believers was a patronizing kind of grace that it was like there's forgiveness but not redemption kind of grace. Even with the ministries, it was always, there was no in my mind, fully realizing what I did and deeply repentant and broken for it, the hope that again, my marriage and my family and what would happen in working with the church, not just Zarephath Christian Church, but the community of believers would emerge at some point to show, look what God has done. Yeah. Now that part of that is selfish and arrogant, about me, of course, but that was my hope, and that's not how it went. And so that's like when, back to the reservation about coming on the podcast, right? It was like, I want to share one thing, you like to share a testimony that happened 30 years ago and what God did and how it all came out amazing.
Sure.
Right. That's not my story. My story is committing a very, committing a heartbreaking sin after years and years of serving Jesus and loving him and loving my wife and loving my children and loving, just wanting to serve the Lord in the midst of all of that, still making a broken decision.
Yeah.
And then, yes, a lot of beauty and a lot of goodness and a lot of redemption, but not everything that was broken was healed.
Yeah.
And so it's a weathered redemption that I bring to you. It's a weathered, there's a lot of beauty to it. And I, when I wrestled with that, and I think I was telling Pete this the other day, right? One of your last podcasters, right? Pete Gatto, a wonderful guy who you connected me to. Just that, when I was struggling with that, whether I should come to the podcast or not, sitting before the Lord, just saying, you know what? No, I need to tell this, because this is where a lot of men are, and women.
Yes.
Like, not everything is redeemed.
Right.
We walk through both simultaneously, redemption and brokenness. It's rarely completely redemption, in the way that we want it to be. We're walking through joy and sorrow simultaneously, through victory and defeat.
Every day.
And
God's in both of them.
Yes.
That's the common denominator.
Yeah.
And it is so hard for us as followers of Jesus and for church communities to understand how to approach that.
Yeah.
Because we're not God. And, there's that spectrum from, grace to legalism, right? And everything in between. And how do we process this? And how do we love this person without highlighting, excusing the sin and even highlighting it, that this is okay, right? And it's just, we just get so wrapped up in that rather than maybe just saying, like, God will sort all that out.
Yeah.
Let's just love them, catch them, and let God sort out the rest. And I see it all the time with addiction, as you do.
Yes.
Right? With the young man or woman or whoever, the man or woman that's running after Jesus. We've seen it in our Foxhole. Running after Jesus, that just so badly wants to beat their addiction.
Yeah.
Loves Jesus desperately, praying that God would rescue them from it. And one night they screw up and they stick a needle in their arm and they don't wake up the next day.
Yeah.
And we as the church go, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
And I would say we rally around that person's family. We hold them. We cry with them. We love them well. And we celebrate that they loved Jesus and so badly wanted healing. Period. End of story. And that's just so hard. And I get it. It's messy. But
it's not so messy for people who really know their brokenness.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's a great point.
And for them, it's life, So that's, again, most common would be the ones outside of the formal church, I would say, that would be able to say, Rob, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I know my own failures. I love you. That's all, right? Doesn't excuse what I did, because it's not. I'm not looking for excuses. Doesn't justify. Doesn't highlight. Just recognizes. I remember actually being I go into the juvenile detention centers, a lot as part of our Lionsgate Ministries, and was doing it even when I was pastoring, it's only recently I can even talk like this without crying, right? I mean, this is a gift of God that I can be here today and not crying.
Yes.
Because that's a new thing. So, I would share my story with these young men in these juvenile detention centers. Now, these are young men who have known way more pain than I've known. Brokenness no in there, no family units, drugs, crime, gangs, friends murdered. Some of them are in jail, maybe in jail their whole lives. All the pain that these special young men have that I'm privileged to meet with regularly. And I remember the one time, it happened a lot, but the one time that stands out, I was sharing my story, because here I am, you guys might not notice this, but I'm an old white guy.
He cracked himself up.
Well, made me think about Sarge the other day, because he was leading a workshop that I was in, and he was saying something about, how old he was. He said, but then he called on me and said, yeah, but then there's Rob,
I was saying I was the old guy in the room, because I realized I was talking to, mostly millennials. And I'm like, oh, wow, wait a second. I think I made some reference that you usually make and I don't understand, because, there
you go.
Anyway, yes.
No, but, so my life journey was very different. I had wonderful parents and a good upbringing. I didn't hit the streets or the gangs. Yeah. I was privileged, to do the things that I had done, and live the life that I had. And these men have just known so much more pain and brokenness than I will ever know. But I remember sharing what happened, basically sharing what we're sharing here to these young men, so they would know a little bit. I wanted them to know me, and I was crying. And the next thing I knew, there's 10 of these young men crying and hugging me. They're gathered around me, maybe 12 young men, and they're just crying and they're hugging me, you know. And when the scene calmed down, I said, guys, thank you. One, but I don't understand really, because you guys have known, the pain you've known is so much deeper than the pain I just even shared with you. And they just said, Rob, pain is pain.
Yep.
Pain is pain. And we understand pain. And we understand you.
Wow.
And that's mostly what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Right? This is why, short of the sin, this is why Jesus came, that he could fully feel our pain. Face everything that we face, except giving into sin, right? Understand depression, understand rejection, understand, anxiety, understand weariness of body and soul and heart. Our Lord Jesus experienced all of that. And it tells us in the book of Hebrews that he did that so he would understand us. And in understanding us and experiencing that, he would be our faithful and worthy Savior and High Priest. And as people, particularly as followers of Christ, that's what we want to be and do, and that's. But anyway, I also have come. There are times I can be judgmental, which sounds crazy, right? No, it sounds crazy after I just shared with you what I've gone through, and I can be, almost inside my head. How dare
shocking?
How dare they be how can they be so judgmental to me, or to that or whatever? And then the Lord reminds me, Rob, they just need your grace, like you need my grace. You needed my forgiveness and still do every day. Just forgive them. Forgive them for if they didn't respond to you the way you thought they should as Christians, or the truth is, it is messy. That goes back to the word, and we don't know how to deal with it, but in general, it'd be a beautiful thing. It will be a beautiful thing if as we as followers of Christ lead with love.
Yeah.
How about that? And I want to apologize if I missed it, but I just want to give you a chance to go back half a click and laser focus on that vision you had. Did you cover that?
No,
I didn't. So this was a amazing gift of the Lord. This would have been about. It was I think everything broke loose. Actually, it was right around this time of year. It was in February, like 6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago. It might have been 7. I have part of God's gift to me is a gift of not
forgetfulness.
Yes, and I do mean that. Like, it is. It
beautiful.
It is a gift.
Yeah,
I don't want to forget what I need to remember.
Sure,
but I'm grateful to not hold the details as sharp for the things that just are painful, But I think it was 6 years ago, and Deb and I were out at this counseling center, as I mentioned, Crossroads Christian Counseling, and I was a mess, a total mess, and I'm with my wife, who I brought just the deepest pain to, and we're doing these long sessions, and our counselor just kind of put everything on hold and said, "Look, you guys need to encounter the Lord. So you're gonna sit here, and I want you to ask the Holy Spirit to come in and literally give you a vision." Right. And I actually had one time in my life prior to this where I felt that I received a clear vision from the Lord. It's not how I operate, I guess, or how God operates in me, but I was wide awake, and I don't know how long this went, but I wrote it down because I never wanted to forget it. I keep it in a journal. And in this vision, I was on my knees just weeping. And it was outside in like a mountain area, and Deb was behind me. And Jesus came walking up to me. And I knew it was Jesus. And he was walking up to me, and I'm weeping. And what Jesus did was he didn't say anything. He just started weeping over me. He leaned over me, and he just started weeping over me. And after a season of that, I'm crying out saying, "I'm so sorry, Jesus. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Jesus." And he said, I know. I forgive you. And then he's crying over me, and I'm crying. And he said, what do you want me to do, Rob? And I said, I need you to heal my family. Please, I need you to heal my wife. And I in the vision, I pulled her up alongside of me. I need you to heal Deb. I need you to heal my children. Please, Lord, I need you to heal me. And at that point, he just smiled and shook his head and nodded. And he didn't say yes or no. I mean, it was just clear. He was saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do that." And then he put out his hand, and he said, "Come." And he took me for a walk. And as I remember the walk, I can still see it. I'm walking through this. It was a mountain area that had like a cliff, and it had like a river, kind of a Colorado type of scene. And of course we were in Colorado, so I guess that makes sense. And, but he's holding my hand, and I'm walking with him, and all I could hear behind me was a multitude of condemning voices. And Jesus just kept walking, and he sat me down at this picnic table, right? And he sat me down with my back to all those voices, and he sat on the other side, and we were just sitting there, and finally I said to him, "Jesus, don't you hear everything they're saying?" And he said, "No." And then this is kind of funny. There was a grill there, and he cooked me breakfast. For real. He cooked me breakfast. And then, then he walked me back, and the vision was over, and I was back present where I was. And I mean, I was still in a lot of pain, and it was still overwhelming, and the years ahead were still overwhelming, but I have held on to that and continue to hold on to that. And I've seen the fruit of the healing, again, of my children, significant healing, our relationships, my own heart, Deb's own heart, significant healing in so many ways. Our marriage wasn't healed in that way, the way that I thought it would be. But there's been a lot of beauty. So that's what the gift the Lord gave me. This was in the midst of the time, again, as I told you, I just wanted to die. It's hard to say this, but I cried out to the Lord for about a year. Please, Lord, don't let me wake up. Take me home. I can't, it's too much. A selfish prayer, but a real prayer. But instead he chose to do what he's done. And it's been a lot of healing.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God, because we see that healing being used over and over and over again. I've seen it, and Mark sees it, and so many others. And, I've admired, because I remember walking into rooms with you there and thinking, I had you so high on a pedestal. I remember, saying, wow, here's this kind of celebrity, really, right? It may be shame on me, and I see you living out that quiet, for better or worse, for whatever reason, for whatever motivation, but it is beautiful to see that quiet commitment, just plowing the ground and jumping in the pit, living life, literally living life with young men.
Yeah.
In addition to your family who have nowhere else to go, who desperately need you. And, as well as myself and, we get to work together, obviously, in your chaplaincy role. And so I get to see that play out as well. But Lionsgate Ministry, man, what an incredible, tell people a little bit about what God's doing with Lionsgate.
Yeah, it's a great gift. So a little funny story. Ever since I was young, I've looked like a druggie. I always look stoned. You probably know, you're looking at me right now. I always look stoned, and I used to have long hair and ripped jeans and t-shirts. And the only thing that's changed is I don't have long hair anymore. So my life got shaped early when I came to Christ as a teenager. I just naturally connected well to people who were struggling with addictions or just struggling on the streets. And that began to shape my life very early on. And shape the ministry life. And that included things we've already talked about. But coming into, after everything began to change, or did change, and our desire to continue to serve the Lord together, and that would be Deb, me, Hannah, Joy, my kids, we launched Lionsgate Ministries with the help of some dear friends, particularly one dear friend who is a very important part of my foxhole, who was the one that just, lovingly kicked me in the butt and told me to stop. Rob, I want you to stop telling me you're sorry. I want you to stop asking me your forgiveness. I want you to stop talking about this because you were the one that taught me the gospel. And you were the one that told me about how Jesus gave his life for the forgiveness of our sins. And, that's what brought me to Jesus.
Wow.
And so I need you to stop doing that. And he's a dear friend, Rick, who has been not just a dear friend and brother, but supporter. He's in a position to be a financial supporter of all the ministries we listed before, and then the ministry of Lionsgate. So I remember him he literally kicked me. He said, look, I'm disappointed in what happened.
Yeah.
But I forgive you, and Jesus forgives you. Now, I'm not upset about it. The only thing he said that will upset me if you don't get up off of your butt and serve Jesus with more passion in the future than you did it even in the past. That's what will upset me. And so I needed that kick in the pants because I was groveling. Like I was stuck in my mud, really, woe is me kind of thing. And he didn't have to just say that once. I'm sure he had to say that quite a few times, because the guilt, the shame, the darkness comes, right? It comes from Satan, the enemy who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And then it comes in my own cooperation of allowing myself to dwell there. And so, part of the Foxhole, you guys know this, is having brothers that love you enough to just kick you in the butt and say, all right,
enough's enough.
Enough's enough.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, because Sarge knows, just in our conversation with Pete a couple of weekends ago, we were talking about in the Band of Brothers, in the charter says you can get a hug or a kick in the ass. And Sarge lovingly explained the kick in the ass part. But what you talked about with Rick is exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
That's the kick, is God forgives you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the important part.
And it's the critical part of that is the context of that relationship.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the kick in the butt from anybody else is maybe not all that helpful, right? It's the respect and that mutual connection that you talked about, that heart connection that allows that to be fruitful.
Yes.
Right? Because without that, it's just a kick.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right. Yeah. He had the right to say that.
Yeah.
Because we had poured into each other's lives and still do. So you're right about that.
But that's so awesome. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah,
thank you, Rick. Really.
Well, that's what don't we need that? Don't we need mentors every day?
Absolutely.
People, and we always talk about the pebble in the pond and ripples. As a matter of fact, this coming Friday, there's an episode coming out called Ripples. It's about the ripples you're making, and you are. What Rick did, no one still knows who Rick is, but look what he's done in your life.
Yeah.
And those brothers in Foxholes are that beautiful, broken, loving force.
And I love that he told you to get up and get moving, right? Like take action. And Rob is buys toward action. Mark loves that. He just perked up. He's like, hey, I heard that. Give me my to-do list. And there's rarely a session, I'll call it, that I have with Rob, which I get to do almost weekly. And when we chat and usually there's a time where I need to be told that and Rob, holds me accountable. He says, so what are you going to do? Like, what's your action step as we leave? Right? What are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I guess it looks like this, and this. And then he's usually like, so how'd that go?
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's pretty important.
Right. And he remembers when you come back. I too have had a chance to talk to Rob.
Can I interrupt on that thought?
Yeah.
The last sermon I preached at Zarephath Christian Church, the very last sermon, I was in the Gospel of Mark, and it's when Jesus healed the leper, right? Mm-hmm.
If you're willing.
Not the leper, I'm sorry, healed the lame man. And do you remember what he said to him after he healed him? He said,
go and tell no one.
Well, that was one of the times,
okay.
Right. In this particular one, he said, now get up
and walk
and take your mat. And
go. At the pool.
Right.
Yeah.
Get up, take your mat and go. I heal you, I forgive you, but now you have to do something. You have to move forward. Right. And, that's the Foxhole that we're talking about, right?
Wow. Absolutely.
And that was the last message
It's the last
preached.
message.
It's amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
It's also just phenomenal part of season 2 of The Chosen. The scene.
Yeah.
Right? When he comes in and the brothers.
Yes.
Because he's the brother of Simon the Zealot.
In The Chosen, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
I'm a zealot for that.
Yeah. I still haven't told you about Lionsgate, but
exactly.
We'll get there.
Feels like I'm ignoring it, but I'm not.
No.
I'll stop go ahead. Let's do Lionsgate. I'd rather do that.
Well, just, it is a beautiful gift the Lord has given to my family. It hasn't always been an easy gift, but we were able, again, significantly through this dear friend and brother, Rick, to launch, to purchase through the foundation, a property in Bound Brook. We launched it as a family, Deb and Hannah, Joy, myself, and it's a residential program for young men coming out of incarceration. In some cases, just homelessness, but mostly incarceration has been a part of that. Young men that we meet in the jails or the programs. And so we had formed Lionsgate, and we were continued to do mission work overseas, which is still beautiful. Just so honored to do that. And work with some of the orphanages, street ministries in these nations. And then began to continue to do the prison ministry, the actual visitations to the young adult correctional facilities and the juvenile detention centers. And then just recognizing some of these young men, I mean, we all know the recidivism. I mean, you go in, you get locked up, you go back to where you were, and rinse, repeat, right? It just keeps happening. So we want to do our part by God's grace to break that cycle. And that's what Lionsgate is in the residential part. So we bring in young men, a limited number of young men at a time. They'll live with us for 2 to 3 years, go through mentoring, discipleship, counseling, life skills training. They become part of the family, literally, and help get legal work caught up, help them either finish school or get a job and then launch them. And that's what we're in the midst of. And then my daughter, Hannah, has just a beautiful passion she's a hairstylist as well. She has a team of volunteer barbers and stylists, and they go to the programs, the homeless shelters, the addiction recovery centers, the beautiful home ministries like Walter Hoving Home, right? Working with women who've been trafficked and things, and just touch them with beauty, physical beauty. And in the midst of that, touch them with the love of Jesus. And so that's kind of the
great.
Broader piece of what Lionsgate is, that I get to have the privilege of walking with these young men. And then Sarge actually comes out and does some soul work with them as well through Marked Men for Christ, which is a beautiful thing. And so finally got to Lionsgate a little bit, which is a big part of my life. So almost every year up until 3 years ago, take biblical tours, teams to Israel, and also have supported work in Israel in the past as well. So, and we'll be going again to Israel in this coming year. But with there's 7 gates that go into the old city of Jerusalem. And the gate that Jesus was marched through to face condemnation and then abuse of the highest order, and then crucifixion and ultimately the resurrection. It's a gate called the Sheep's Gate, but the other name for that is a Lion's Gate. My kids were raised on Aslan from The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Chronicles of Narnia. So Aslan, a lion, has always been a figure of Christ because in Scripture he's called not just the Lamb of God, but also the Lion of Judah. Yeah. And we see that, both in the book of Isaiah and then back in Revelation. And so it was a picture for us of the people that we work with, the young people, all of us in some way. And you just heard some of my story. All of us have a journey that takes us through failure, condemnation, and into hope. And that's these young men that we work with. We saw that journey clearly, that they knew well condemnation, but they didn't know resurrection. Yeah. And so the Lionsgate name became a symbol that awesome. We know condemnation, but you're going to know life and resurrection. Yeah.
And they do. And it's, it is so, so beautiful. Mark and I, having been there and, being a part of your life and their lives, man, they're just awesome guys. Yeah. And, so much love, and you've given them so much love. And I think it's so cool. For those that aren't familiar with Lionsgate, it's sort of this big, beautiful, historic house. And it's just an amazing, people walk in and they're like, wow, this is like this amazing space, and this, quote unquote mansion is filled with these, these men. They leave, they come out of homelessness or, leave the jail cell, and here they are living in this, pretty palatial, beautiful, home. And it's a home. And Rob lives in a small room above the garage. He won't say that, but I'll say it, and he lives in the back of the property above the garage. And sometimes even if there's not room in the main house, he invites them into his room and, to as a place to live. And it's just such a beautiful depiction of that ministry. Like come in, have this home. Like, this is yours. Right. I'll be back there if you need me, and I will be here, and it's just so beautiful. Like, who's doing that? Who's doing that? Like, you take the master bedroom, and I'll be in the, the garage.
Yeah. And my daughter and son-in-law, they're in the house as hands-on as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Hands-on. Yeah.
Beautiful family. Just incredible.
Really. So I don't know the pre-transition Rob. My vision of you, I know in my heart you are not seeking my affirmation, but I've got to tell you some things. The Rob I know is phase 1 experience in Marked Men, P2 meeting at Lionsgate at the house. I got lost in. Where's the bathroom? Sorry. And then counseling with you, myself and with my wife, and listening to you, just listening to Sarge talk about you. I can tell you, I want you to know I so appreciate the thoughtful, prayerful, peace-filled man that wound up in my life. That's just a gift to me and my family. There's just something about you. I want you to understand there's a power in you, right? It's soulful. It might be in the groove. I'm not sure, but there's something there that makes me want to keep talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm blessed that you're here.
Thank you, Mark.
And
thank you.
As hard as it is for me to listen for an hour and 7 minutes, this was good. This was so valuable for me. And I know it will be for others. I really feel that strongly. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Sarge.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. We've been going a little while. Is there anything else that you wanted to say? Now is the time, and we want to give you that time.
We call that "What's next."
Yeah. What's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. Wow. What to say? Jesus, for all of us, anyone listening, right? Wherever you are, whatever you're in the midst of, Jesus weeps with us. Mm-hmm. Not just with me, but he weeps with us, weeps over us, and is merciful and forgiving and redeeming. It doesn't always look the way we thought it would look like or hope it would look like, but redemption is a beautiful thing, and grace is everything. If you know people that are walking through not just what I just described, but everyone's walking through something, lead with love. Yeah, lead with love, lead with grace. And get in their lives, and if you're close enough, kick them in the butt, right? To move forward, to move forward, to pick up their mat and to move forward. I'm so thankful to the Lord for his mercy, for restoration, significant restoration. I still walk. This isn't about me. I don't want this, but I guess I do want to say I still walk with sorrow, and I can still get hit with these waves, but I'm learning to embrace them as a God's. I'm really willing to. I'm learning to embrace them as what God uses, sort of like the thorn in my flesh. I'm not saying Paul's came through sin. Mine did, but it's a daily reminder. Rob, my grace is enough for you. My grace is enough. So let's press on again another day, right? It keeps me mission centered and keeps me from being too distracted. And then I think I also just want to say thank you to you guys. You know, I thank you for being my friends, genuine friends. So grateful that you're part of my Foxhole as well now, and grateful to ministries like Mark the Man for Christ, Lionsgate, of course, grateful for that. But yeah, I'm a testimony, or I'm seeking to be a testimony of Jesus' mercy and redemption. It just doesn't look like I thought it would look. Mm-hmm. But as my wise counselor said to Deb and I once, you will always be grateful for what the Lord will do. Yeah. So think about this in your own lives, guys, right now, and everyone listening. You'll always be grateful for what the Lord will do through something you'll always wish never happened. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Brother, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your heart with us, not just today, but every day. And keep going. Keep going. I'm so thankful for you and for what God is doing through you and has done through you, and for the fruit from the failure, you know, and how our brokenness somehow equips us to minister to others in a way that we weren't able to before. And so, you know, while I'm not thankful for the pain, I'm thankful for that redeeming fruit that does come from the failure that, that we experience, whether it's from sin or otherwise. So this was great. Thank you, brother. And thank you for listening to the Foxhole Symphony podcast. Reach out to us. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
For hosting once again. And, brother, we'd love to have you on again sometime and just get an update. This was awesome. God bless you. And thank you all.
Peace.
Rob Cruver is a warrior in God's army as far as I'm concerned. I am grateful for his honesty in sharing a season of his life that most of us would want to stuff away in a dark closet and never talk about again. Rob explained what happened and made no excuses. He talked about the pain and the brokenness that came from that time. And by God's grace, he shared the fruit that came from that same season. Fruit that looked like a renewed focus on people and priorities that were aligned with his mission. A new level of self-awareness and humility. Relationships that were forced to grow and stretch. Opportunities to minister to brothers and sisters that are in similar struggles. And in my humble opinion, the best one of all, God stoking the fire in Rob to get up and get back to the kingdom work he has before him. The enemy came at Rob with the intent to steal and kill and destroy, but Jesus. He was waiting with open arms to remind Rob that he came so Rob and all of us may have life and have it more abundantly. Lord, please continue to use this podcast to impact the lives of all who will listen. I ask that you would bring hope and healing to each and every one of them. Meet them right where they are and reveal yourself to them like only you can do. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it and invite others to the Foxhole. You can find us wherever you download your favorite podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you know when new episodes drop, and please rate us and comment there too, as it'll help us get found by others who could benefit. Find, follow, and like us on your go-to social media networks by searching Foxhole Symphony, or visit foxholesymphony.com to make it super easy to find us. Drop us a line with feedback, questions, topic requests, who knows? Maybe you'll be a guest on a future episode. In the meantime, prepare to move, embrace discomfort, and just be you.